And we're live, I think, maybe. Who knows? Share this with your friends, your family, your loved ones, all that good stuff. And it's going to be episode 4 of the After Action Project.
This is the After Action Project, and we're bringing you the student's perspective on firearms training. This is the podcast that takes you inside the eyes of the student and the mind of the instructor, from practical to tactical, medical to legal, and everything in between. If there's a course for it, this is your fly on the wall After Action destination. This is the After Action Project.
Tonight it's Andy Montoya and yours truly, Jeremy Gill. Bryan Enns is in the student seat, bringing you his perspective on Judson Crossland's Force on Force course. Andy, let's get it started tonight, man.
Hey, how's it going, Bryan, Judson, and Jeremy?
Great,
you doing all right
great.
tonight? Good.
Doing well.
So, just want to thank you guys for hopping on, first of all. Bryan, I wanted to ask you, did you have any equipment or anything that you used in the Force on Force training class with Judson?
No, I just showed up for the course, and they provided all the equipment.
Nice.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your firearms experience and what led you to Force on Force training and specifically Judson's Force on Force course.
Well, I tell you what, I've got extensive experience growing up on a ranch, shooting since I was a little guy, and hunting, of course. And I had started a security team at our local church and felt like it was necessary to possibly avert any terrorists or any type of ruckus that we might encounter. I had researched quite a few institutions or programs to bring this to fruition on our security team, and I felt like we needed some training other than just knowing how to shoot. And then one of our friends had attended Judson's course and highly recommended it, and that was what I started the process to do a little investigation and due diligence, and that's how we picked Judson, because all the reviews were excellent.
Awesome. What was your goal, or what were you looking to gain by taking a Force on Force course? And were you the only one from your church security detail that took it, or was it a small group of y'all?
Yeah, there was 13 of us, including the senior pastor. Just basically, we felt like there was a need other than just carrying in church, because anybody can carry and anybody can shoot with a concealed carry, but there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of responsibility. And so, yeah, there was about 13 of us, and we thoroughly thought it was well worth the time and the money spent.
Yeah, I think you said you hit the nail already. Responsibility. It's a huge responsibility, as we all know, carrying a firearm. So what benefit do you think this course provided for you and your other students?
Oh man, innumerable, in the fact that, like I had reiterated just a while ago, you go out and hunt elk or deer and whatever, but that's a lot different than being in a congregation of 300-400 people and looking across the congregation. And, it's just how to manage the situation, tactics used to move around from door to door, area to area, recognizing the threat, recognizing, can I do it without a firearm? What are the techniques I can use to disarm this person, or, possibly this isn't an armed person, and what can we do to circumvent the need for firearms? So, we learned all the situational training. We looked at different tactics and different ways to address the situation, and the real live role plays was very, very good and excellent with the different scenarios.
That's awesome. Talk to us about some of the drills and scenarios that y'all went through.
Well, we started out with basically hand to hand. I mean, if you're sitting in the congregation and a guy stands up and pulls out a gun, what do? How do you disarm that person quickly before he can even get a shot off or whatever his intention would be? So that's how we started. And again, it was all force on force, hand to hand type stuff. Different techniques to disarm the person, different techniques to take the person to the ground. And then we moved into different ways to address different situations. Our church has 17 exits, and so we learned how to basically situate the sanctuary and all the exits to mitigate threats, so that when worship starts, we've got it all covered. We shut down everything except one main entrance. And so that was very helpful. And then we moved on to actual scenarios, role plays with Nerf guns, which was very, very helpful. And it was all done in a very safe manner. And so we learned how to mitigate those risks with actual role plays in our sanctuary, in our building, which helped tremendously. So we got a lot of experience, and they helped us a lot for to circumvent outside before he even gets in the door. So we stationed some people outside in key areas, and thought it was very, very helpful.
Awesome. So it sounds like you got the course kind of focused in on your group of students in that, and setting up a defensive plan going into it, and kind of how to set up a perimeter and work together as a team before the unlikely event of an active shooter type response. Did you say Nerf guns, or did y'all use airsoft or simunitions? What type of?
I'm sorry, airsoft.
No, that's because I've seen. I wasn't sure if Nerf guns led up to the airsoft or the simunitions. We've seen other videos where Nerf guns are used kind of as a lead into it. So I wasn't quite sure if that was part of the component or not.
No, that was my mistake.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, no problem. Just wanted to ask about that and clarify that.
Yeah. And they sting, so you know when you got hit.
Yeah. I hear they leave welts.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you know, we're going to find that out here October 28th. We're going to take Judson's Force on Force class too. You know, you talked about 17 different exits in your church, and that's a game that we play in my house when we go and we sit down in a theater or a restaurant. How many exits do you see? Where can you find your way out of here if you need to? So those are some good points to say. With that being said, what are the biggest differences that you can see between Force on Force and say like a typical live fire training course, to where, like you said, airsoft, you know, it stings, but it's not deadly, not even less than lethal for that matter. So what would you see like a biggest difference between the two?
Oh man. Well, you know, probably the real case scenarios. I think that was very impressive by our whole group. We had a quick review after the course, and the whole team talked about, you know, what we could do better, what we got out of it, what we learned, and we had a retired Army full bird colonel in our team, and he was very impressed as well, seen action in Vietnam. And so I think those real case scenarios, they were also demonstrated in our church live fire, because he didn't know what to expect. There was you against the rest of them, and we all had roles to play, and made you think on your feet. And so you put into practice the tactics and the specialities that we learned during the course. That was very helpful.
So it sounds like y'all had varying levels of experience and training amongst the students in there. Judson, tell us how do you tailor the training down to an individual student, but at the same time continue to challenge some of your more advanced students, or some of the students that have maybe experienced and received a little bit more training than some of the beginning students?
That's a really good question, and it's a really difficult question to answer. Basically, for like when I have an advanced student, like for instance, at the Silver Mountain Instruction art class in Silver Spruce, we had an ex-police officer that was just gung ho, and he straight up told me, he's like, "Look, I've taken my two, teenage daughters out in the woods, and I've left them there for 4 days with nothing but a knife and a sleeping bag kind of scenario." This guy was hardcore, and what I did was, yeah, and but I also had a bunch of school teachers in that same class that were much more timid, much less experienced. So what I did was I pulled him into the scenarios with his experience, and then tried to transfer that to the school teachers. So it's one of those things where you have to, like, if I've got the Navy SEAL that's in the class that just wants to take the class, then I'll take that Navy SEAL and say, I want you to be the best Navy SEAL you can, so that these people over here can learn from your experience. Does that kind of answer that question for you?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It makes sense. Yeah, I was trying to find my unmute button. Rookie of the day over here. Andy, I think you said you had a follow. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh.
No, I was going to say, I think Andy had a follow-up question for you as well.
Yeah, kind of just along the lines of the same question I asked Bryan with you, Jeremy, and Judson. Judson, so an advanced student, the difference between live fire and force on force, obviously you're not using real guns, but do you also teach some of the fundamentals in class as well? Like, hey, your grip is bad, or, things like that you would teach on a firing line, because, legitimately we're still holding guns, and that's what this is about. Being able to use a gun and defend your life, and to make those decisions in that split second. Let me start that over. So do you teach those fundamentals as well?
Yeah, we spend a little bit of time on fundamentals. It really depends on the class as well. If I've got a group of teachers or churchgoers, church safety details, whatever, that are just running the gun on the range, and they've told me that, or they showed me that, there's no need to really spend a lot of time on that. But if there's a need for a little bit of that fundamental instruction, we absolutely spend time on that. I think we spent a little bit of time on that with Bryan's group. Not a ton, because they had kind of the skills that were necessary, but we absolutely make sure the fundamentals are there before we actually throw them into scenarios, because if you don't have that base, then you're not gonna perform well in the scenarios.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, to add to that, I think either you or Jeremy mentioned the difference between being on a square range, one safe direction kind of thing, versus being in a situation where you've got your entire 360-degree world. I can introduce stress on a range, but I can introduce artificial stress on a range by shaking your shoulders, playing loud music in your head, but we still have a real firearm in our hand, so we can't like sit there and make you push you to the. And force on force with airsoft, there are no rules other than leave your mask on until we say in scenario. And that's when all the firearms or all the airsoft are collected. We say in scenario that it's safe to take your mask off. Other than that, it's reality.
That's good stuff. I'm excited to do this class coming up. It's something that I haven't done yet, but I'm definitely excited to do. So, Bryan, back to you. Being that you are the church security Navy SEAL guy that you are, what would you say to a student who's considering this force on force training? Somebody that maybe a parishioner that's in your church, a family member, a loved one. What would you tell them? What would you tell them to be ready for, and what kind of advice would you give them?
Take it. I've already talked to quite a few of my buddies that weren't there in different situations, and highly recommended it. My brother's in the Congress, and I told him about it, and they had went through a similar training session, and but he admitted after I talked to him and told him what we did. He said, "Man, this sounds like a lot better program." So, I could highly recommend it.
So I think you're probably I know your answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So would you take this class again?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think the ball's already in the motion to have another course with additional set of people, probably the staff at the church.
Awesome.
Yeah. Knowing Judson like we do, we figured you'd say that. He's a great guy and a great instructor. So Judson, why did you become firearms? Yeah, he's there are a lot of great instructors out there, but everything that I met Judson through Andy, and Judson has been Andy's mentor and has kind of switched that role over, or now he's mentoring myself as well. And so it's great. We're looking forward to hosting and training with him, and hopefully going to hit the road in 2018 and take some classes together if we can get our schedules and with for our students and each other lined up to get out there and take some training together. But Judson, why did you become a firearms instructor, and why Force on Force?
The first question, why did I become a firearms instructor? About 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, 5 years ago, I was standing on a range with Sean Heron of We Like Shooting and Ryan Moray of Moray Law. He's my buddy. He's a lawyer down in Colorado Springs. And I could not shoot the bullseye to save my life. And Sean Heron and Ryan were both instructors at the time. And they came up to me and said, "Stop, put your gun down." They put a blue gun in my hand. They kicked my feet a couple of times. They said, "Hunch your shoulders forward a little bit, lock your elbows down, do this, do that." They replaced the blue gun with a real gun. And I was suddenly shooting bullseyes for the rest of the day. And I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I want to do that to somebody, because I had that aha moment where it just blew me away that just these slight little changes in the position, grip, and stance could make somebody a better shooter. So I pursued becoming an instructor. About 3 or 4 months later, I took my class, passed my quals, became an instructor, and started instructing basic pistol and concealed carry. And then about a year ago, I decided to become a training counselor, which is the instructor's instructor, where I go in and teach the regular instructors or regular people how to become instructors. So I actually certified new instructors now. So that's kind of the genesis of my why I became a firearms instructor. I wanted to give that aha moment to other people. Second part of your question was why Force on Force. It was really just a segue off of concealed carry. I mean, we in my concealed carry class and some of my defensive pistol classes, we put people in situations with blue guns, just fake plastic guns and fake plastic knives and stuff like that, and have run scenarios with, okay, what if this happened and this guy had a gun and this guy had a knife, and the guy runs at you with the knife, and do the whole tooler drill thing. And we did that on the range, in the classroom, and Nerf baseball bats and all non-lethal stuff. And I took a Force on Force class, and I was like, man, this is so much more real than using a blue gun and a plastic knife. So I decided to start developing and building my Force on Force classes, and it's become something that actually is one of my most favorite things to teach, because it actually, I think, people get the most out of it when they're in that reality-based training, and it hurts.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you, where it being more beneficial, or some of the most beneficial training that you can receive. There is I guess, a need for some firearms training as far as handgun fundamentals go and defensive shooting fundamentals go. But I think a lot of that can still be obtained and achieved in a Force on Force course if done correctly. In some defensive shooting situations, it could be argued that Force on Force training is more important or more relevant than sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, grip, stance. Because if you're getting attacked in the Walmart parking lot and that dude is on top of you, it doesn't matter how good you are at 5 yards, 7 yards, or 10 yards on a bullseye target. You're going to get hit. And if you're not careful, you're going to what matters more is, are you going to be able to get that gun out of the holster and into the fight while you're getting attacked or while you're trying to protect your loved ones? So I absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah,
Andy, I think you're right.
same thing. Yeah, you know, now we'll edit it out. Editor, edit this part. Yeah, so we did a medical class here with Sean Heron about a month or so ago, and one of the scenarios I had was, okay, you're going to walk out of your house, and your neighbor and his wife are fighting in the front yard, and their teen daughter is in the middle of it, and you notice he has a gun. You know, so you walk out and you try to figure out that scenario. Hey, what's going on here, guys? Yada, yada, stop this stuff. And then all of a sudden you see the gun go to the wife. And I pulled my gun and I shot him 3 times. And, you know, he falls down. The wife's also hit. So now I'm having to render first aid to the wife while I have the daughter freaking out because her dad was just shot and her mom is now injured. You know, that was a really good scenario. Fast forward to about 10 minutes after the scenario was over, I was just standing there watching, and it kind of hit me. I was like, man, I actually shot that guy, you know, with the real airsoft gun, with real recoil. You know, it was kind of, you know, gave me the chills a little bit to think, man, you know, I really had to shoot this guy. And so with the equipment that Judson let us use with this airsoft gun, you know, like I said, it has real recoil. You hear it. It's loud. So Judson, on that, we've talked about a little bit airsoft, and you talked about protective gear. What other gear do you use? What kind of training materials do you use in your class? And is there anything that you really require a student need to bring with them?
An open mind. That's the only thing they have to bring is an open mind and a good attitude. That's all I really, you know, can really ask for. Other than that, I tell them to bring clothing that's going to get dirty because, you know, some of these scenarios people end up on the ground. We do some of them outdoors with, you know, in the dirt, in the whatever. So, I mean, we tell them to wear clothing that is okay to get dirty, but really there's no equipment they need to bring with them. We supply everything, all the protective gear, all the airsoft firearms, you know, all the air, the BBs, everything. We give them everything they need.
Talk to us about how you develop the different scenarios that you use during your Force on Force courses.
I watch the news. I mean, that's it. I mean, I watch the news. I mean, this just happened down in Albuquerque. What was it, yesterday, where the Circle K got robbed?
That's every day, but yeah, where the robber was shot. Yeah.
So I look at that scenario, and I say, okay, now I'm going to put Bryan where that girl was, and I'm going to reenact that scenario, and I'm going to put Jeremy as the bad guy, and I'm going to tell Jeremy, I want you to do this, 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 and this, and then I'm going to tell Bryan, you're standing behind the counter at a Circle K. Sorry, Bryan, you just got downloaded or downgraded from a church security to a Circle K clerk. But I'm going to put Bryan in that scenario and say, you know, you're doing your daily duties. And then I'm going to send Jeremy in as the bad guy and say, do your thing. And I'm going to, you know, watch how Bryan reacts to that. And in my Force on Force scenarios, I am totally focused on the carrier. I could care less what the bad guy does. I mean, I kind of want to know what he's doing, but I want to know what the concealed carry guy's doing, because that's where the mistakes that are going to be made need to be learned from. So it's one of those things where I just look at the real world, and, you know, we reenact, you know, some of the, like, if we're gonna cross over into some of the, you know, other classes that we teach, we reenact the, you know, Boston Marathon bombing, the Aurora Theater shooting. We haven't quite gotten to Columbine because that's just, you know, there's so much going on in that scenario that it lasted for too long that we can't really reenact that effectively. But we just take everyday real life scenarios that we see on the news and build, you know, scenarios out of them and then put people in them.
That makes sense. Using some real world scenarios for reality-based training. We have a viewer question from Sarah. She's one of our former students. She's one of your former students as well. She took the civilian medical course last time y'all were in town. So Sarah asks if you provide protective headgear.
No, we want you guys to have no sunglasses, no eyeglasses, no protective gear whatsoever. Just so that, if we do get hit in the eye, I get a massive lawsuit on me. Yeah, we provide everything, Sarah. We actually also, so this is the full face mask that we use. It's just a basic paintball mask, but it covers eyes, ears, chin, nose, full face. There is actually no way an airsoft BB can get in there to your eyes based on the way the foam pattern is inside there. We provide all of these to all of our students. We also actually bring a, dash of like fleece vests and long sleeve heavy shirts. If those of you that are like really apprehensive about getting shot with one of these little BBs here at 350 feet per second, fleece vests for people that really want to kind of lessen that. It still hurts. Even being hit with one of these BBs that, with a vest on, with a fleece vest, it still stings a little bit. It does reduce it a little bit, but yes, absolutely, Sarah. We provide every piece of safety equipment we can, and we actually have I won't run scenarios without at least one range safety officer, and that range safety officer is looking at everybody's face masks, and he's also looking at doors, because I don't want some random bystander to walk through a door inside of an airsoft scenario without face protection on and suddenly get a stray BB in the eye. So when we do those, in fact, I think I asked Bryan to be a range safety officer for me for that first scenario that we did. I asked you to watch that front door to make sure nobody walked into it, or watch the stairs or something like that.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so yeah, we always make sure that every entrance is kind of being watched to make sure that that we don't get some innocent bystander that gets hit in the head or the eye with one of these BBs and not protected. So, Sarah, I hope that answers your question, but we do actually take every safety precaution we possibly can.
Bryan, did you feel safe out as far as safe from physical injury outside of the excluding the welts or the sting from the airsoft? Were your eyes sufficiently protected? All that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the primary importance that they put on the real life scenarios, is everybody got eyes on, and when the action is and the scenario is over with, and they announce, okay, take your eyes off, we're all good, and they come and get our guns. And, it's very, very safety conscious. I'll put it that way. Always felt safe.
That's good. That's really good to hear. So Judson, you brought up putting your eye out with that thing. So if I wanted to bring my Red Rider BB gun, can I bring my own equipment?
No, actually, you can bring your own protective gear if you want to wear, your own paintball mask or face protection. But as far as the quote unquote firearms go, they come in and out of a bag that I keep and my range safety officers inspect. And these are just KWA ATP pistols. They're not very expensive. They're not cheap, but they're not very expensive. But before every single class, they are inspected, they are gone through, they are cleaned, they are make sure that they're functional. And the only equipment that we offer or that we introduce into our scenarios comes out of our force on force kit, so that we know as instructors and RSOs that it's safe. So we don't introduce anything outside of what comes in our kit.
Well, I see it's a Glock, so I feel pretty safe.
Yeah, it's like the KWA is actually a Glock 17 knockoff. It looks just like a Glock 17. Doesn't act like one, but the nice thing is it fits in Glock 17 holsters. So,
does it still get upset when you make fun of it and call it ugly?
Yes, it does. The magazines drop out of the bottom of it when you do that.
Next question on that one. Are there 5 generations of the KWA ATP pistol?
No, I think there's only one.
All right.
And let's touch on that for just a second. There's a lot of guys out there that say if you're not training with simunitions, you're not really training force on force. And I want you to ask Sean Heron that, because the first time we started training with these pistols, he was like, yeah, airsoft is not a big deal. And he was the bad guy for like, I don't know, 6 or 8 scenarios into it. And he finally walked up to me and he's like, dude, I need a vest or something, because these things are, like stinging the crap out of my vest or my chest and everything. I mean, it hurts. When you've been hit. So going back to the square range versus, force on force, after these scenarios are over, we sit there and talk to our students like, where'd you get hit? Well, I got hit here, here, and here. And if they say, well, I got hit in the leg, we ask them like, are you still in the fight? Because if you get shot in the leg, most likely everything up here is still going to be functioning just fine. And we kind of let that hit home. Even though I'm hit down in the leg or maybe in the shoulder, I'm still in this fight. So it definitely hurts, but it also, kind of gives that feedback as to, should you still be fighting right now, or did you get shot 4 times, center mass, and you're probably down at that point.
Yeah, David asks if he could shoot Andy with that. And I would say, for anybody out there that's listening this tonight, if you sign up and you take that class on October 28th and 29th, just let Judson know that Jeremy said you could shoot Andy during that force on force course, and we'll. I'm not guaranteeing that you'll be able to shoot Andy. He might get the drop on you, but we'll see if we can get you set up in a scenario against Andy or myself. So not just Andy. If you want to take some shots at me in a force on force scenario, just mention that to Judson, and we'll see if we can make that happen on the 29th of this month.
I just got one question for David. Do you feel lucky? Do you, punk?
So, Judson, where do you think force on force training should fall on the responsibly armed citizens continuum of training?
So, in my repertoire of classes, I basically teach. Edit that out. Sorry. So I teach a basic pistol class, which is I've never touched a pistol before, and I need to learn how to hold it. I need to learn how to be safe with it, store it, clean it, all that stuff. And then I teach what I call a concealed carry basic pistol course, which is I leave out a lot of the really, really basic pistol stuff, but I leave in grip, position, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, follow through, breath control, hold control, all of that stuff. And we focus on fundamentals and marksmanship on the range. And then the next class I teach is called Defensive Pistol 1. In that class is where we start talking about, really getting out of the holster, fixing malfunctions, getting on target quickly, possibly doing some moving, then shooting, not necessarily moving and shooting, if that makes sense, but getting to cover and then getting around that cover and actually shooting. After Defensive Pistol 1, that's when I personally recommend some sort of a force on force class, because you've gotten the basic pistol, you've gotten the concealed carry stuff where you've gotten, fundamentals of pistol handling and marksmanship. Defensive Pistol 1, you actually apply those fundamentals with some stress involved with, snap caps and force malfunctions and moving and then shooting. And then you throw force on force in there, you take all that stuff and combine it together. And now we have a real life scenario where you know how to draw, you know how to press the trigger, you know how to get your sights if you need them, and you know how to move.
Bryan, we have there's a couple questions from our viewers on Facebook Live. Can you, I guess, go into a little bit of detail, Bryan, for us, what some scenarios that you ran from the perspective of you, the student? Were you the concealed carrier in a gas station? Kind of where in these scenarios, what was your role? And because I think we have some students trying to figure out if this is where this falls out. And I think you could do a great job explaining the role of the student in this class.
Sure. Well, there was a number of scenarios we ran. One that comes to mind was that as a church, we were having a meeting with a dozen of us in a small room, and somebody had a beef against the church, came in one of the 2 entrances to the meeting, I was the only one carrying, and he started brandishing a pistol and pointing it in the direction of the lead pastor. So I immediately got in position without him noticing and pulled my weapon, held it on him very forcefully, told him to drop it. And at that time, he moved the pistol in my direction. I shot him instantly. He went down, and he had an accomplice unknowns to us that ran down the hallway, and which is very appropriate because we got a lot of halls, because we got a lot of exits. So unknowing that, there was some shots fired, and I took evasive action and crept around the door and saw the second accomplice and shot him. So that was these scenarios, these real life scenarios are very challenging, because as a concealed carry person just sitting in a meeting, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's true. I mean, you don't know at what time somebody might burst in one door or the other and what their intent would be. The other one that comes to mind was that we were sitting in the auditorium that holds about 500 to 600 people when it's full, and I was sitting on the back row trying to position myself as a security person in the congregation, and a gentleman burst through the door, the main door that we still have open, and ran towards the pulpit. So, and that was, then people stood up in front of me, and so you've got to make quick decisions on your positioning. You're thinking about people freaking out, running against you because you're going towards the threat, and what you're going to do to mitigate not only the congregation that he possibly would be shooting up before you get there, but also, obviously mitigating your safety as well. So, yeah, that, and then, yeah, I was laughing here when you was talking about the Circle K incident, because we had that as a bank robbery, and that was very good. And where I was just a bystander, and the scenario was that we were all standing in line trying to get some at the teller, and the guy in front of us pulled a gun, and the teller freaked out, and there was a guy behind me and a guy to my left that were accomplices. And I remember in the force on force that they say if you're a bystander and have an exit, run, get away. And I took that advice. I was the only one that took that advice, but I was close to the door and I exited. I wasn't going to be a hero with three guys pointing guns at different people. So, that was three of them that come to mind that stuck in my mind, that how to approach an open door when you think you've got a perp down the hallway, and not just standing in the door and waiting for him to shoot you as a bullet sponge, but creeping around the door, and the stance you would take, and how you expose what part of what you expose and how often and how much. And so that was very, very helpful.
You mentioned there was a scenario where the solution was to just escape, get out of there. Were there other scenarios like that? Because I think as a firearm, as a responsibly armed citizen, that's some training. It can't be all shooting all the time, right? Like if every target that you presented is the solution is to shoot it, that might create or reinforce some negative training. And I definitely think it's my opinion that if that's the only training that we do, where every time we see a target, we shoot it, that doesn't force us to process targets and threats and actually take the time to determine if it's actually a threat, or scan our surroundings and see if we have another option, if that's available. So how many were there scenarios where you guys didn't have to shoot, or where if you did shoot, it would have cost you a loss?
Oh, yeah. There was, and that's what I thought was so valuable about this real life scenarios, is that, that bank robbery, I was by the door, I was not carrying, and it was going to be a bloodfest if somebody started shooting, and I'm sorry, but I went through the door and went the other way. And so there's a lot of on-hands training that says, hey, if you can take this guy down without shooting him, or if you can run out of the situation, or if you can protect your family, your kids in some other fashion, do it. And it was stressed that, firearm shooting, especially in our situation, is hopefully the last resort. Hopefully you never have to do it, but at least they gave you those training skills that if you had to do it, you were prepared. But yeah, they talk quite extensively about getting out of the situation, defending yourself without a firearm, taking a drunk down possibly where you don't shoot him, or just a guy running, crazy in the church or wherever that may be, in the Circle K or whatever, how to disarm him without shooting him, even though you might be carrying, but, with your protection in mind as well. So, a lot of situations that, hey, run or take him out with hand-to-hand or a tackle, or something like that, how to disarm the perp without shooting the guy.
Yeah, that was a good point that Jeremy made there. I think I would assume, and Judson could probably answer this, people probably go to the gun way too quick because we know that we're not going to die when we get shot. It's just going to sting and hurt a little bit. So that's a good point. In our concealed carry class, Jeremy always reinforces that, the reluctance to go to the gun. Be ready if you need to, but always be reluctant. So that's a good point. We can't every scenario make it, hey, I'm going to shoot, although we want to probably, especially if it's David. But, we can't always go to the gun every time. So that's a good point. So Judson, we've talked about Bryan here, who's in a years many long, I should say, shooter in the world since he was a little kid. We have instructors. So who's your force-on-force student? What does that look like to you?
I mean, I kind of go back to that my repertoire of classes. I mean, the force-on-force student can be, I've got a gal that has taken defensive pistol 1, but she's kind of, I wouldn't say timid, but she's not really, I don't want to shoot her. Let me put it that way. She's just such that nice little girl that, she's married to one of my really good friends. He's one of my instructors here in Durango. But the reality is she carries a gun every day. And the force on force is, yes, you learn through the pain, but it's more about situational awareness than anything. And I think it's anyone that carries a gun. And and anyone that's thinking about carrying a gun. If you're a gun guy and you've been hunting all your life and, you got a couple of pistols that you keep in the safe and you take out to the range and have a good time with, but you don't carry every day, but you're suddenly thinking about starting to carry because, quite frankly, our world's on fire and, only, a blind person or a fool would not see that. And even a blind person should see it because they can hear what's going on. Anybody that feels like they want to be prepared for, kind of anything out there. If you can ask Bryan, and we ran them through scenarios that were, bank robberies, Circle K. We ran through, theater shootings. Just pick a topic. I've got a book back here on my shelf that's got probably, 70 some odd different scenarios that I can put people through. The knife stabbings, there's all sorts of stuff out there. So I would answer that question as simply as anybody that feels like they want to carry a gun, they do carry a gun, and they want to be more prepared to actually present that gun and understand what that means when they do it. Because after the fact, when the scenario is over, we sit around and talk about it for 5 or 10 or 15 or a half an hour and say, okay, what went wrong here? And what did Bryan do right in that bank robbery scenario? Because I was sitting in the back of the room during that bank robbery scenario, and I saw Bryan almost go to his hands and knees and crawl out of the room. And it looked like a cat running out of the room. He was moving so quickly. And I remember thinking to myself, that's what I would have done if I wasn't armed. If I saw an exit, I would have been gone. And it puts the scenario-based training and the force on force puts that in people's brains.
Yeah, the to make it serious is the important part, and I think running through those serious, doing an after action on each scenario is really good. I think you posted a video in one of our Facebook pages, Albuquerque Shooters Alliance, to where people could sit there and break it down and actually look at an idea, one of the scenarios. If you didn't, Judson, if you could post that video, that'd be great. That way, these students can see exactly what you are doing in that class. Um, so what's one thing that a student can do to prepare for a class like this? I seen that video and then I think in my head, okay, well, I'm going to get prepared for that scenario in case Judson does it. But in the reality and in the real world, we can think of 1,000 scenarios and we do this constantly. But, how do you be prepared for a scenario that, is going to come at you? What can a student do before they come to your class to be ready for this?
I read that question, or I mean, I just, Jeremy, edit this out, okay? There really isn't anything you can do, Andy. And the bottom line to that question is, you just said it in your question, is we think about this stuff all the time. When we conceal carry, I'm walking down the street, I'm looking in windows to see people, what's going on behind me, and playing out roles in my head. And I walk into a sandwich shop for lunch, and a guy's standing a little bit too close to me, in line. And I'm like, okay, so I turn myself, my strong side just a little bit away from him. We think about this stuff all the time, but the reality is, when you're actually put in that situation where you have to react, the only preparation for it is to take force on force classes. Start with the fundamentals, get good marksmanship, and then take some sort of a defensive pistol class that has, force on force connected to it. I mean, that's really, I mean, you can wear a long sleeve shirt. That's about the only, proper preparation I can give you. Don't wear, thin t-shirts because it does sting. But at the end of the day, it's a really hard question to answer. I mean, get the fundamentals, get good marksmanship, and then take a class that teaches, some tactics that has force on force.
Are there any prerequisites to taking the force on force class?
I would like to have people that have been through basic pistol and have gone through some sort of a, defensive pistol class, or somebody or a group of people that say, look, we really need this, and I will custom tailor a class to that group, which is very much what we did with Bryan's church safety detail. Is we broke down the class as they wanted it taught, at the skills that they needed, and taught it that way. If it's just a regular old force on force class like the one we're going to do in Albuquerque at the end of October, then I've talked to every person that's coming to that class that I don't know personally, and I've asked them, what's your experience with firearms? Are you a hunter or are you a shooter? Because those are two very different things. You can be a shooter and not a hunter, and you can be a hunter and not a shooter. So I want to know what their background is. How often do they go to the range? Do you think about tactics, or do you think about hitting the bullseye? Because there's a very big difference between tactically hitting the bullseye or your target and actually bullseye shooting. That's kind of, I kind of treat every, situation and individual, differently or subjectively.
I think we have another viewer question. Andy, can you see that viewer question down there in the Facebook comments? All right. So we have one of our alumni or alumnus. I don't know how you pronounce that word. Say that. Will this class help with freezing or some other psychological reactions to high stress? The fight, the flight, freeze, posture, submit. Do you think this class, or what do you think? How do you think this class helps overcome some of those reactions that we might not be able to control?
So it absolutely will help, because what it does is the first time you freeze up and you get shot or stabbed or pushed around or taken to the ground or whatever the case may be, that will trigger something in your brain that says, I don't want to do that again. And what you'll see with these classes is we start the classes, we don't throw you into a, mass casualty, shooting environment where, all of a sudden everybody dies, right off the bat. We start the course with all of the instructors running a scenario to set the stage. This is how we want it to go for the rest of the day. And then we take the people that are in the class and slowly start to put them in, easy scenarios like, okay, this is a no-brainer. I'm just going to shoot this guy in the head or whatever the case may be. Or, it's something that, this absolutely doesn't even need to involve a firearm at this point. And then we slowly start ramping that up to where you start getting shocked and you start failing and you start realizing that, okay, if I do this, then this is going to happen. And our brains work in amazing ways. Suddenly when pain is involved, you all of a sudden start remembering and thinking, I take that back. You all of a sudden start doing and not thinking about doing that. Does that make sense? Where once you get that little failure and that little sting of pain, the next time you're going to think about that differently and react differently. It's just going to come naturally. Does that answer that question, Sarah? Or was that Sarah that answered or that asked that?
Yeah, I believe it was Sarah that asked that one again. I think Andy has one more viewer question about this class specifically.
Yeah, David asked what the cost course is going to be, Judson.
And kind of as a disclaimer, this is September 2017. Prices are likely to increase in 2018. So if you're listening to this 5 years from now, if we're still here in 5 years, like the world. So as of September 2017, Judson, what is the 1 day, the 8 hour force on, or the 9 hour force on force course cost?
Yeah, so this is actually a weekend that we're doing down there, but this class that we're talking about right now is the second day, and it is $150 for the day. If you choose to take the class on the day before, which is a civilian trauma medical class, and that class is also $150. If you take both classes for the entire weekend, we knock $50 off the weekend, so it's $250 for the entire weekend. So you'll get 9 hours of force on force, and 2 of those hours is actually hand to hand. We're bringing in a guest that we had on the show last week, Scott, to do some hand to hand stuff in the afternoon. And then the following day on Sunday, the 29th, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, is that right?
I think Saturday is the 28th, I believe.
Yeah,
Saturday's
it's the last weekend of October. Yeah, so it's the last weekend of October. And the 29th is all day force on force. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll go straight through 5:30 in the afternoon, and it will be nonstop. We'll take a half hour for lunch, and it's pretty intense. I mean, you can ask Bryan. We ran them through scenario after scenario after scenario after scenario, and we broke apart into groups. We brought those groups back together and messed with their heads a little bit. I mean, it truly is it's an intense course.
So I have a question for both of you, but Bryan, let's get your answer first. What would you say to those students who are reluctant to take a force-on-force training class?
I don't want to be too blunt, but as Judson said earlier, if you're either blind or you can't see what's going on in the world, and we would think that small little town in southwest Colorado would never be affected. But that's what a lot of the people thought at Sandy Hook. I think if all the scenarios, not exactly all of them, but a lot of them were in small communities. All of them were in soft targets. I used to tell my dad years ago, we'd wrestle together about what kind of pickup to buy. Should we buy a four-wheel drive or no? And I told him, I said, Dad, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And so preparation. I can't overemphasize the need to be prepared. I don't want to be ever caught where I could have saved my family or my kids, but I wasn't prepared and either carried or hand to hand or whatever the case may be, or medically the medical portion of the 2-day course that we took was awesome. It was all directed towards casualties, terrorist type activities. We did do some CPR, some Heimlich maneuvers, stuff like that. But most generally, we mimicked mass casualties and how to control, how to triage until the proper authorities get there. And it was just very, very helpful as well. So, man, I can't overemphasize the need in my mind for more people to take this, to be prepared, and to fight if necessary, and know how to fight if that's what it comes down to.
Beautifully said. Judson, what would you say to the students that are reluctant to take a force on force course?
Don't let money be an option. Call me. We have payment plans. I think this type of training is so incredibly important that I think they should reach out to me and say, hey, look, I really want to do this, or hey, I feel reluctant to do this because of what, and talk to me. Talk to some of my former students. I'm sure that I can get Bryan and somebody on a 3-way call for 10 minutes, and Bryan can explain to them what his relevations were about it. It's just one of those things that, I'm not really sure if I want to carry a gun. Well, make the decision and take a class. And once you take in that class, you can decide whether or not you really want to carry that gun. Same thing with carrying in public with force on force. I'm not sure if I really want to, carry my gun because I might have to use it. Well, get involved in some of these scenarios that we put you through. And if suddenly at the end of the day, you're like, you know what, that was way too scary. I don't want to be involved in that. I want to be the guy that runs out the door. Cool, be that guy. But at least get the information first. It's really difficult to coax somebody into taking a force on force class because, they're not cheap. I get that. This stuff costs money. There's a bag full of crap back there and a whole bunch of protection gear. We have to charge a little bit for these classes just to recoup and pay for gas and hotels where we travel around to. But ultimately, I'd say give me a call. And my number is, should I even do this right now? You're muted.
Do it.
Is it the 867-5309 number?
No, but okay. So this isn't the We Like Shooting show, so I'm going to give out my phone. If you have any questions about these courses that we offer, Silver Mountain Instruction specifically, not Practical Defense, that's Jeremy's phone number. You can email him. Give me a call. I answer my phone, 719-99-1625. Call me. We'll talk about it. If we're local or close, we'll meet for a coffee. I'll give you the lowdown on what the class is like, and we can go from there.
I will interject one thing. Can I interject one thing, guys?
Sure.
We had two members of our 13-member team that were really not interested in carrying before the class, and I don't know what their reason was, but by the end of the first day, they said, we're going to get our concealed permit and we're going to start carrying. So I think they saw the need and for that option. And so I was very impressed that the guys, Judson and his team, not by any means whatsoever of coercion, but just from the simple fact of how they presented the course, these two guys said, sign me up. They were unsure, and now they're on the team.
That's awesome.
It's the likelihood of ever needing your handgun to defend yourself, or the likelihood of ever being involved in a life-threatening self-defense encounter is very slim. The odds of that happening are very slim. But it's the stakes. It's what's at stake, right? Like if you haven't trained what a robbery is going to look like if you're at a gas station or if somebody approaches your window, the window of your truck and sticks a gun in your face, how you're going to respond to that, with your two kids in the back. If and when that does happen, that's the only thing that matters is if you're going to be able to defend yourself and your loved ones and your family, right? So the odds might be small and slim, but it's what's at stake. And in that situation, the world is at stake. Your world is at stake. And if you don't have the tools and the training and the ability to defend yourself, then your life is at the mercy of a criminal. You're betting your life on the mercy of somebody who's willing to stick a gun or a knife in your face for whatever reason, right? It doesn't matter what their motivation is. If it's a political attack, if it's somebody trying to make a statement or doesn't agree with your political stance or wants your wallet or wants your truck, it doesn't matter what their motivation is. The only thing that matters is if you are going to be able to defend yourself and make it home to your family, to your loved ones. And if you've ever taken a class with me, you know that my segues are awesome. So Bryan, do you have any, what improvements or advice do you have for Judson for improving that class, if you have any? And then we can edit this out,
really,
Judson, if you want later, but I know we kind of sprung this on you. We don't like doing any gotcha questions, but I doubt there's anything. So yeah, what improvements could Judson make for that class?
We talked about that in our debriefing after the meeting, and we really couldn't come up with anything. Maybe a little bit more on CPR, but a lot of us are already certified with CPR, so possibly the person that is not certified with CPR, that would be beneficial. But really, guys, we don't have hardly any criticism what he could do better. It was all done very well, and we're very excited about what we learned in this class.
So, you know what, Bryan, I want to let you know that Steve and I sat there for a good, 45 minutes to an hour. He was driving home to Colorado Springs, and we sat there on the phone, and we talked about a lot of the after action. You guys didn't have a ton, of negative against us, which, I greatly appreciate. I'm humbled by that. But the one thing we did take away from that was there was a technology issue that we fixed and the CPR. And I want you to know that the next day, that Monday, or I'm sorry, the 2 days, because I took Sunday off, that Monday, I went and ordered 5 CPR dummies to use in our next course. So,
perfect. Perfect.
Just so you know, we actually went and made a considerable purchase based on your recommendation, because we're the only way we improve these classes is based on what you guys tell us. So I just wanted to let you know that we actually took that to heart, and those should arrive at Steve's house in a week or so.
Oh, great. That's great.
That's cool. Another thing that I'm excited to learn is CPR with the addition of the civilian medical trauma classes that you brought down for us through We Like Shooting, Judson. What are some other training courses that you do?
That I do personally?
Right.
So my main focus is defensive pistol. And, we start with basic pistol, concealed carry, and then force on force, or defensive pistol 1, force on force. But I also offer instructor level courses. I'm an NRATC, which means I instruct instructors, and I offer pistol instruction, chief range safety officer. Those are the 2 main ones, because that's what people request most of all. And, the medical classes that we offer are not through me. Those are classes that I bring in experts to do. So, I'm not, I could probably teach a medical class because I've taken so many of them, but I'm not really, I could teach the class, but I couldn't answer the obscure questions that people come up with, like, what do you do, after you do the CPR and this, that, and the other. But so, the main classes I teach are concealed carry, defensive pistol, force on force. I teach range safety officers, offer civilian medical 1 through 2 different instructors. Sean Heron is my primary instructor, and Steve Reyes is available to me if Sean is not available, because he's very busy with the We Like Shooting show and the Firearms Radio Network. The action response course is a big one that I offer, which is the one that Bryan took, and that's the one where we teach educators, moviegoers, churchgoers, whoever wants to be involved, just a bigger level of situational awareness. And again, the instructor level courses, chief range safety officer, those are the main ones that I teach and offer.
stuff. Yeah, I was a student of Judson's as we started out this conversation with in the beginning, and I can say for any of you guys that are here locally, as a matter of fact, I believe Judson is now starting to travel throughout the country. So get involved in that too. I personally recommend his instruction course too if you want to become an NRA instructor. But I have a serious question. I'm going to turn this a little bit on the serious side towards the end, and I've asked you this question once before, Judson, and I'm going to ask you it again. And then Bryan, I'd like to have you answer the same question. So this is our life, right? We teach this day in, day out. We talk about concealed carry. We talk about that slight chance that we may have to use our firearm in self-defense. Judson, can you tell me what makes you, in your eyes and in your opinion, that you know 100% if you needed to pull the trigger to defend your life or a loved one's, what makes you feel in your mind and your heart that you could do that?
Because I love life. I love my wife. I love my friends. I've trained extensively in different force on force scenarios, and not just my own, but in other people's. I've taken, I can't even count how many courses I've taken in defensive pistol, and through Robert Butler with KTG. He was on episode 2. Go back and look at that if you want to hear about him. I mean, I've taken almost every course that he has offered for 3 years or so, and I've taken them multiple times. I mean, I've got a wall full of certificates that I've gotten from him. What makes me think I could actually do that? That's a tough question, man. I mean, I think it's because I love you. I love Jeremy. I love my wife. I love my family. I think at the end of the day, if somebody were trying to take that away from me, I would not think twice about it. But I didn't really think I could. I didn't really. I hate you because I'm actually getting emotional right now, and until I got put into a scenario in I think it was Ohio. I was taking a class, and somebody had a gun to my wife's head, and I had to make a choice, and I made the right choice. And at that moment is when I realized I can do this if I really had to. I don't want to. I absolutely don't want to. I mean, I carry car insurance because I hope I don't have a car wreck, but if I do, I want it to be paid for. Now I carry, concealed carry insurance. That's another whole story, but in case I have to, I never want to, but I believe I could. Based on all of the training that I've had, I think I could do it.
Yeah. So for you guys out there that are watching this, you watch our videos and ask yourself that same question. And if you don't see now, by the look on Judson's face and the answer that he just gave, how serious and how important this is to us, then you miss it. I asked Judson that same question, and I got just about the same answer. So it's serious stuff. So I love asking that question to people because I get different answers. So thanks for answering that, Judson. I know that was a tough question. Bryan, would you mind taking a shot at that question as well?
Yeah, like I agree with Justin wholeheartedly. It's a somewhat difficult decision, although I was always trained from small boyhood that when you become a man, you do everything in your power to protect your wife and your children, and if that means sacrificing your life, that's what it means. And so, would I ever want to do that? No, absolutely not. But when it comes down to it, if I have to, yes, I would pull the trigger and sacrifice myself to protect my family. So, and secondary issue is to protect the kids in Sunday school and our people in the congregation. So I would be prepared to do that. And they teach that in concealed carry. If you're not prepared to pull the trigger, then you shouldn't be carrying, because it'll get you in more trouble and cause more problems than not.
But anybody out there, one of the questions we ask and topics that we cover in our, basic concealed carry class is mentally preparing yourself and asking yourself that tough question is, are you able to take somebody's life? Are you able to shoot somebody to save your life or the life of a loved one? And occasionally we'll get an answer. It's, well, I don't know if I could shoot somebody to save my life. Then you flip it around. You say, well, could you shoot somebody to save your kid's life or your brother's life or your wife's life? And it's like, without hesitation, it's like, absolutely, yeah. And then we explain, well, it's your obligation to make it home to them. And if you're having trouble wrapping your head around that or overcoming that obstacle, a good exercise to do is just picture yourself laying in bed, looking up. And instead of laying in bed, you're laying in a casket. And it's your family around your casket sending you off and saying their last goodbyes. And just picture that moment and then see if that changes your mind or helps you change your mind and overcome that. So let's go to Judson, Andy, or Judson, and edit this out, editor. Yeah, heard. I'll do that. Judson, Bryan, what advice do you guys have for the responsibly armed citizen, whether it's related to force on force or anything else about carrying a concealed handgun? What's your advice for those folks?
Dry fire practice. Everybody thinks going to the range and playing with these these cool little airsoft guns that go pew pew and they reciprocate and they shoot out little BBs that hurt you, and going spending a couple $100 a month shooting 500 or 600, 800 rounds a month is what it's all about. The reality at the end of the day, it's fundamentals. Dry fire practice. Sit at home with a regular old SIRT gun. Spend a couple $100 and get the cheap plastic one. Spend $300 or $400 and get the expensive metal ones. They're weighted. They function like real guns with the exception of the slide. Just sit there for 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, and even if it's like 15, 20, dry fire practice. And once a month or so, go take a class. Spend a couple $100 and go take somebody's class and learn something. This is all perishable. This is not like riding a bike. You sit on your guns for a month or two and not go to the range and not do dry fire practice. You've lost at least half of all your fundamentals. In a real scenario, real life situation, you've lost half of your fundamentals. You go back to the range, you got 5 or 10 minutes to get your fundamentals back. Cool. How long does a gunfight last? 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds? I mean, in reality, Bryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. How long do those scenarios last when the guns came out until scenarios stop happened?
You're exactly right. 3, 4, 5 seconds maximum, and then it was all over. But I agree that, you run through scenarios in your mind from time to time as you're walking down the street with your wife. I mean, put yourself in the situation. What happens if X happens while I'm here? How can I defend myself and my wife or my kids in this situation? If I go to a movie theater, where are the exits? If I go to a restaurant, we talked about playing games, walking down the street. Ask your wife or your kid, what was that guy wearing that just passed us? What did he look like? How would you describe him? What did he do? And so, I think, again, just practice, role play in your mind with your family, do some instruction with them. This is what I learned. This is how you should react if X happens. And so, just preparation and practice.
That's awesome. And that's all great advice. So as a reminder, we're going to have we're hosting that Force on Force course down here. Judson's coming down here. It'll be civilian medical on day 1. It'll be the 8 hours, 8.5, 9 hours of Force on Force on day 2. That's October 28th and 29th. Each one of those 2-hour blocks is $150 unless you take both of them. And if you do take both of them, that'll save you $50 on the entire weekend. So $250 for, 16, 17 hours of training that could possibly save your life.
It's like 17 hours.
17 hours. I'm not good at math, but I'm pretty sure that's less than $20 an hour for that great training. And obviously, y'all aren't good at math either, or you would see that this class is ridiculously underpriced, Judson. But you can find out more about Judson, Silver Mountain Instruction. It's SMI or sminstruction.com. That's the correct website. On Facebook at Silver Mountain Instruction as well. And then After Action Project podcast, all that good stuff. Anybody have anything? Andy, you have anything for our listeners and our viewers?
No, once again, I'll just say thank you guys for hopping on with us, especially our local people that's on live, taking 2 hours or so out of their time to sit with us. I really appreciate that. So I want to extend a special thank you.
Excellent. Hey guys, remember to stay safe. I don't know what that is, but stay safe. Yeah, these bloopers are awesome for the edited version of the podcast. If you guys want to watch the edited version of the podcast, if you're just jumping on here, check out afteractionproject.com. We're on YouTube, and then soon we will be on the Firearms Radio Network. Of course, here we go.
If you're a recent graduate of a firearms-related training course and would like to join us on our show, or if you'd like us to review a specific firearm-related training course or instructor, shoot an email to show@afteractionproject.com. Remember to join a local firearms advocacy organization. As always, stay safe, shoot straight, and remember to secure your firearms so that unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them.
Hey, Bryan and Judson, if you guys want to stay on for the 5-minute wrap up afterwards, that'd be awesome. Everybody else, have a good night.